Understanding what truly triggers an avoidance desire has many times proven to be confusing for those with an anxious attachment style. You might think it was something you said or did. Maybe you were too emotional, too intense, or asked for too much closeness too soon. But none of these were the real reason for the distancing. In fact, your emotions and your desire for closeness likely brought them very near to something they both long for and fear: intimacy. Avoidants unconsciously fear the vulnerability required for real closeness, even while craving connection on a deep level. When this craving begins to be fulfilled, often through the emotional openness of an anxiously attached partner, they begin to panic. They feel engulfed, trapped, or afraid they'll lose their independence or identity, and so they withdraw, deactivate their feelings, and often disappear altogether. What's important to understand is that their distancing wasn't about you at all. It was about their own internal wiring. And that same wiring often leads them to experience regret and longing after they've pulled away, especially when they see you begin to heal, evolve, or become less emotionally available. This is where the power dynamic begins to shift. Understanding this psychology allows you to not only stop blaming yourself, but to regain your sense of agency. If you still care about this avoidant person and want to influence how they see you now, there are a few deeply psychological strategies that can have profound effects. Let's talk about them. First, go completely silent. This is one of the most powerful psychological resets you can create with an avoidant. And also one of the hardest, especially if you have an anxious attachment style. After being emotionally activated by their distancing, you likely felt an overwhelming urge to explain, fix, reach out, or seek closure. But all of those actions only reinforce their power and affirm their avoidant beliefs. Your silence, however, is profoundly disruptive to their expectations. Avoidants expect their withdrawal to trigger pursuit. They anticipate that you'll reach out, seek reassurance, or try to reopen the emotional connection. This expectation confirms their belief that they hold the emotional power and that you depend on them for stability. When you instead become completely silent, no messages, no stories, no likes, no reaction of any kind, you violate that expectation. This often causes them to begin monitoring you silently. Through social media, mutual friends, or simply energetic attention. They begin to wonder why you aren't reacting. They question whether you've moved on, or whether someone else might be validating you now. This internal questioning creates discomfort and curiosity, which are two essential emotional states required to shift their perception of you. But silence alone isn't enough. What happens during that silence matters just as much. Which brings us to the second strategy. 2. Become completely unpredictable. Avoidants thrive on predictability, not because they love stability, but because they need to control emotional closeness. They feel safest when they can predict how others will behave emotionally. This helps them avoid vulnerability. If they know you'll always be there, always respond, always forgive, they never have to emotionally risk anything. But when your behavior becomes harder to anticipate, when you no longer follow the pattern, it creates emotional friction that disrupts their defense mechanisms. This unpredictability doesn't mean being erratic or manipulative. It means stepping out of the expected roles they've cast you in. If you were always the one to reach out first, don't. If you used to like their posts or watch their stories, stop. If you used to always be kind, patient, and available, become mysterious, confident, and unbothered. Your shift in energy challenges their assumptions. They can no longer rely on the emotional script they've been using to distance themselves. This disruption can trigger a subconscious need to re-engage, simply to restore the balance they've lost. What makes unpredictability powerful is that it forces them to begin investing emotional energy, wondering what you're doing, who you're with, what you're feeling. This inward focus pulls their attention back toward you, even if they don't realize it. 3. Mirror their emotional energy. Most anxiously attached people tend to overfunction in relationships. They try harder, give more, initiate contact, and take emotional responsibility for the connection. This creates an energetic imbalance, and avoidants sense it. To regain emotional control, avoidants often reduce their investment, causing the anxious person to try even harder. The cycle continues until the anxious person feels drained and rejected. Mirroring breaks this cycle by rebalancing the emotional scale. You simply reflect back the level of interest, effort, and engagement you receive. If they're distant, you're distant. If they're warm, you're warm. This creates a subconscious reflection that forces them to take responsibility for the emotional tone of the connection. Mirroring prevents you from overextending and allows you to regain self-respect. It also creates the impression that your emotional world no longer revolves around theirs, which shifts the dynamic in your favor. Instead of being the emotionally hungry partner, you become their equal, capable of detachment, self-control, and independence. This is deeply attractive to avoidants, even if they don't admit it. Why? Because they fear emotional dependence, and when they see that you don't need them, they feel safer wanting you. 4. Elevate your life in visible ways. Avoidants often come back when they see you evolving, not when you chase, cry, or explain. They are drawn to strength, mystery, and confidence. When your energy shifts from "I need you" to "I'm thriving without you," their perception of you changes. They begin to feel something they rarely expect from past partners: admiration. This is especially true when they observe you growing in the exact ways they once criticized or overlooked. Maybe they dismissed your emotions, and now you're emotionally grounded. Maybe they didn't value your presence, and now others visibly do. Post less but with more intention. Speak less but with more impact. Let them see or feel that you are no longer waiting, no longer pleading, no longer stuck. This energetic evolution makes them rethink everything. And finally, 5. Stop needing closure. Avoidants rarely give true closure because it requires emotional transparency, something that terrifies them. They often disappear, send mixed signals, or give vague reasons for leaving. This leaves anxious partners spinning, obsessing, questioning, replaying every detail. But here's the truth. The absence of clarity is clarity. When someone avoids accountability, avoids communication, avoids emotions, they are showing you who they are. That's your closure. Real healing begins when you stop seeking answers from someone who can't even face themselves. You don't need their permission to let go. You don't need their apology to begin healing. You are allowed to outgrow the version of you that once begged for love. You are allowed to rise, and when you do, silently, steadily, unapologetically, you shift the entire dynamic. You become the one they didn't expect to lose. You become the one who changed the story, and that, more than any message, any explanation, or any goodbye, will be felt.